Imagine you were trying to learn how to code, and you keep hitting this very specific, incredibly frustrating wall.
Oh, I know the exact wall you're talking about.
Right. Everywhere you look, every tutorial, you're told to just use an API. So, you do a little research and you read the standard definition. It says an API is an interface that connects you to another program.
Which sounds simple enough on paper.
Exactly. It sounds super simple. So you decide to try it out. You open the documentation for something called the Web Audio API. You start reading. You get, I don't know, 5, maybe 10 paragraphs into this really dense technical documentation, and you just stop.
Because none of it makes sense yet.
Yeah, you are entirely frustrated because you still cannot figure out the most basic part of the equation. What program are you actually connecting to?
It is an incredibly common wall to hit.
Yeah.
You are staring at the interface, but the destination you are supposedly plugging into is completely invisible.
Right. And it creates this intense curiosity, but mixed with a lot of confusion. I mean, is this program a server sitting somewhere in Tokyo? Is it a piece of software you forgot to download and install first?
Or are you just shouting code into thin air?
Yes. Hoping something somewhere actually hears you.
That feeling of shouting into thin air is exactly why this topic needs to be untangled, because if you don't understand what you're connecting to, the entire concept of programming with an API just completely falls apart.
Well, to all the divers joining us today, welcome to the Deep Dive Classroom. Our mission today is to decode the true meaning of an API in the real world.
And this matters immensely.
It really does, because the term API is thrown around constantly. You hear it in tech, in business, even in everyday news. But its actual definition has mutated and expanded so much over time that it is causing massive confusion for learners and, honestly, even seasoned professionals.
It's absolutely, the definition has drifted a lot.
So let's cut right through the jargon. So what does this all mean? What is the plain English bottom line here?
At its core, an API, which stands for Application Programming Interface, is simply a contract. It is the ultimate abstraction.
Okay, an abstraction.
Right. You absolutely do not need to know how something works. You just need to know how to ask it to do the work for you. You provide a specific input, and it promises to give you a specific output.
So it's basically a black box.
Exactly. The messy, complex internal mechanics of how it achieves that result are entirely hidden from you.
Okay, let's unpack this for a second. If we truly have no idea what is happening behind the scenes, couldn't the quote-unquote program we are connecting to be literally anything?
It could be anything. That is the power and, well, occasionally the comedy of the abstraction. As long as the system honors the contract, input goes in, output comes out the back end, could be a supercomputer or it could be a complete disaster.
Which brings me to this hilarious, entirely true anecdote from our sources that perfectly illustrates this.
Oh, the food price one.
Yes. So there was this developer who paid to use an API that advertised accurate, hourly information about food prices. Companies were paying good money for access to this data because it was supposedly this highly sophisticated, automated system.
Right. They assume it's a massive data scraping algorithm.
Exactly. But someone actually dug into it and realized the program behind the API wasn't a global market tracking algorithm at all. It was literally just a guy in the Netherlands manually typing data into an XML file every other day.
I love that story so much. The fact that it was just one guy typing when he felt like it is incredible.
Right. He had a script that automatically updated the timestamp, so it looked to the outside world like the data was refreshing hourly.
It's brilliant, honestly.
It became a huge scandal when people found out. Another person in our sources joked that the back end of an API could literally be monkeys on a typewriter.
And from the perspective of the developer using the API, it wouldn't make a single bit of difference. As long as the data came back formatted correctly, the API is doing its job.
That is wild to think about.
But that perfectly captures why developers call the API the OG abstraction. You hear complaints in tech about modern software having way too many layers of abstraction, but the API is the original necessary layer.
It's what makes modern software even possible.
Exactly. To ground this, think about a restaurant. You don't walk into the kitchen to get your food. The kitchen is essentially spaghetti code. It's a tangled, messy, unreadable logic of chefs yelling, pans flying, ingredients mixing.
You definitely do not want to navigate that.
No, so you talk to the waiter. The waiter's the API. You give your order, which is the input. The waiter navigates the chaos of the kitchen and brings back your meal, the output.
That's a classic comparison, but I want to push on it a little bit. Because a waiter is a human intermediary. If we want to think about the physical mechanics of an API, it reminds me more of like a power outlet in your wall.
Oh, that is a fantastic way to look at it. Let's break that down.
So when you want to power your television, you don't need to know anything about electrical engineering. You don't need to know if your local grid is powered by a nuclear plant, a solar farm, a coal fire, or literally a guy on a bicycle attached to a generator.
Just like the guy in the Netherlands.
Exactly. You just need to know the shape of the interface,
Yeah.
the 2 or 3 prongs on your plug, and you trust the contract that if you push the plug into the wall, you will get 120 volts of electricity. The wall outlet is the API hiding the entire global energy grid.
And if the city switches from coal power to wind power overnight, your TV doesn't break because the three-prong interface in your wall didn't change.
Right.
The back end was completely swapped out, but the API remained identical. Think about a hammer. If the tool is a hammer, the API is the handle.
Or a car. The API is the steering wheel and the pedals. You don't care how the combustion engine works.
Precisely. But this brings us to an important historical evolution. Because if it's just an interface like a steering wheel, that still doesn't explain the confusion from the hook.
Right. Why couldn't the learner find the car for the web audio API?
Because the term API has suffered from massive mission creep. It has evolved from a very specific, narrow definition into a giant umbrella term that covers 3 distinct contexts.
Here's where it gets really interesting. Let's trace how this evolved, starting before the internet was everywhere.
Right. The first category is what we can call traditional or operating system APIs. This is the original flavor. Historically, APIs were just sets of routines and protocols built to let a software application interact directly with the computer's underlying operating system.
You mean like Windows or Mac OS?
Exactly. So if I'm building a basic text editor app for Windows, I'm not writing the raw machine code to tell my laptop's graphics card how to physically illuminate the pixels on my monitor to draw a save button.
Oh, that would be a nightmare.
If every software developer had to write code to communicate with every individual brand of monitor, graphics card, or hard drive, no one would ever finish building an app.
It would take years just to make a calculator.
Right. So Microsoft provides the Windows API. Your text editor simply calls a function in the API that says, essentially, draw a button here.
And then the OS handles the rest.
The Windows OS takes that request, translates it, and does the heavy lifting with the hardware. When you click Save, your app doesn't spin the magnetic disks on your hard drive. It just hands the text to the OS API and says, save this.
That makes perfect sense for software running locally on one machine. But then the internet exploded.
It did.
And suddenly, you didn't just want to talk to your own computer's operating system. You wanted to pull data from entirely different servers across the globe.
And that shift forced the invention of the second category, web APIs. Sometimes they're called REST APIs. According to our sources, this is what 9 out of 10 people actually mean today when they use the word API.
It's so common that it has basically hijacked the entire definition.
It really has.
But why did we need a new category, though? Couldn't computers just read websites the same way humans do?
They could, and for a while they did, but it was a total disaster. Imagine a massive platform like Reddit. They have millions of users and a ton of valuable data. Before web APIs existed, if a developer wanted to build a bot to track trending topics, they had to use a technique called scraping.
Scraping meaning the bot pretends to be a human web browser, it loads the entire URL, and then sips through all the code.
Yes, and think about how incredibly inefficient that is. The server has to send the heavy HTML structure, all the CSS styling that makes it look pretty, the image files, the layout data.
That's a massive package of information.
It's huge. And the server is sending all of that just so the bot can search through the text to find the one single number it actually cares about, the upvote count. It wastes incredible amounts of processing power and bandwidth for the server.
It's like asking for a glass of water and someone mailing you an entire refrigerator.
That is exactly what it's like. So websites realized they needed to stop handing out refrigerators to bots who just wanted the data.
They needed a better way.
Exactly. They created a separate, dedicated door just for machines. Instead of a URL that returns a visually pretty web page, they created a collection of URL endpoints exposed on the internet specifically for raw data.
Okay, so how does that actually work in practice?
The mechanism is actually quite elegant. The client, which is your app, sends an HTTP request over the internet to that specific URL. You use standardized methods or verbs to tell the server what you want.
Verbs like get, post, put, and delete.
Right. You send a GET request to retrieve data, a POST request to add new data, PUTI to update something, or delete to remove it.
It's very structured.
It is. The API server receives your request, parses it to ensure you have the correct security keys, and then queries its internal database. Once it finds the answer, it generates a response.
But this response isn't a web page. Our sources mention the response usually comes back formatted in JSON or XML. For someone who has never looked at a raw API response, what does JSON actually look like?
JSON stands for JavaScript Object Notation. It is essentially a very lightweight, standardized text format designed specifically for machines to read and parse quickly.
This is not pretty.
Not at all. If you opened a JSON file, it wouldn't look like a website. It looks like a plain text document filled with curly brackets and quotation marks, organized into simple key-value pairs.
Almost like reading a dictionary. It would say something like, username : John Doe, upvotes : 500.
Precisely. It is just the raw facts, stripped of all the visual design. The server sends this lightweight package of JSON text back across the internet, along with the status code.
The Phages status codes.
Yes. If everything worked, you get a 200 status code, meaning okay. If the data doesn't exist, you get the famous 404 not found. Your client application receives that raw text, parses the JSON to extract the numbers, and then uses them however you want in your own visual interface.
Okay, so we have OS APIs for talking to your local hardware and web APIs for fetching raw JSON text over the internet. But this brings us right back to the glaring mystery from our hook.
The Web Audio API.
Yes. If web APIs are about sending HTTP requests to remote servers, why did our learner get stuck on the Web Audio API? Where is the URL? Where is the server?
What's fascinating here is that we have hit the third category, and it completely resolves the mystery. The Web Audio API does not belong to the first category, and it absolutely does not belong to the second category of web APIs.
So what is it?
It belongs to the third bucket browser or web platform APIs.
Okay, so what is the actual mechanism here? Because if I'm building a web app and I want to generate a synthesizer sound, I don't send a GitTT request to a server in California and wait for an MP3 file to be mailed back to me over the internet.
No, the latency would make it impossible to build a live instrument.
Right.
You don't send a request over the internet at all. What you have to realize is that modern web browsers like Chrome, Firefox, Safari, they are no longer just simple document viewers.
They are massive programs.
They are incredibly powerful, complex pieces of software that are essentially operating systems in their own right. They have massive engines built into them, written in low-level languages like C++, Rust.
I mean, they can draw 3D graphics, they can access your webcam, they can pinpoint your GPS, and they can synthesize audio in real time.
And all of those complex built-in capabilities need to be exposed to web developers. The browser creators do this by providing JavaScript interfaces. This is what we call a browser API.
Oh, wow. So the answer to the learner's question, that what program am I connecting to, is that the call is coming from inside the house.
Yes.
The program you are connecting to is the web browser itself.
Exactly. You don't need to find a remote server because you already unloaded the program when you installed Google Chrome. The Web Audio API is simply the collection of JavaScript functions that the browser provides so you can control its internal C++ audio engine.
So it's not like mailing a letter to a remote database and waiting for a package of JSON data to return. It's more like sitting in the driver's seat of the browser. And the Web Audio API is the radio dial built right into the dashboard. You already have the program.
That is the perfect way to visualize it. JavaScript is just your hand turning the dial. The mechanism is entirely local. You are interacting with a set of capabilities that are already present on your machine's memory.
That clears up so much.
But the word API is used in both contexts, but the physical reality of what your computer is doing is night and day compared to querying a database over the internet.
But wait, staring at the documentation is exactly what frustrated the learner in our hook. If you are a developer or, say, a project manager trying to understand what your engineering team is building, how do you know which flavor of API you are dealing with?
It can be tricky if you don't know what to look for.
Right. If you're looking at a new documentation page, what specific red flags or green flags are you hunting for so you don't waste hours looking for a server that doesn't exist?
The fastest way to orient yourself is to go straight to the Getting Started page of the documentation and look at the verbs they are using in their examples. Are they telling you to fetch data, or are they telling you to call a function?
That's a great distinction.
If the documentation asks you to make HTTP requests, if you see words like getT, postT, endpoints, URLs, or parsing JSON responses, you are dealing with a web API. You are talking to a remote server over the network.
Okay, and if it's local?
If the documentation tells you to initialize an object or just start calling JavaScript functions directly in your code, like audio context.createOscillator with zero mention of a network connection, you are dealing with a built-in browser API or a local framework API.
You just have to look at whether the instructions require a passport to travel across the internet, or if they are just giving you a remote control for your own living room.
It will save you hours of confusion.
This confusion over finding the server isn't just a technical misunderstanding, though. Our sources point out that this is actually a language problem created by the tech industry itself.
Yes, the terminology is a mess.
The way developers speak about APIs is often grammatically broken, which makes it infinitely harder for beginners to grasp the concept.
This is a brilliant observation about the messy evolution of tech language. The problem stems from the word interface itself. Linguistically speaking, the concept of an interface is an uncountable noun.
Similar to a word like information, you would never say, I have 3 informations for you. Or the word matter in physics, you don't talk about plural matters.
Exactly. An interface is a conceptual boundary. It is the separation between two things. You can't put it in a bucket and count it. But because people don't fully grasp that conceptual level, they try to make it concrete and countable.
Right.
So you will constantly hear developers, tutorials, and managers say things like, we need to call these two APIs to get the data.
But technically, they aren't calling 2 APIs.
Conceptually, no. What they really mean, and what they should be saying for the sake of clarity, is we need to call these two endpoints if they are talking about a web API's URLs, or we need to use these two functions if they are talking about a local library.
But because everyone just uses API as a catch-all plural noun to mean a thing I am connecting to, it blurs the lines completely. It makes a beginner think an API is a physical object they need to locate.
The language in tech is constantly evolving, often in ways that are technically inaccurate but socially accepted. This means that as a learner, you have to accept that the terminology will always be a bit messy.
You can't just rely on a dictionary.
No, you cannot rely on strict dictionary definitions. You have to rely on the context of the environment you are working in to understand what someone is actually asking you to do.
Okay, let's bring this all together. We have covered a lot of ground today, from the power outlet on your wall, to a guy in the Netherlands typing XML, to the internal audio engines of modern web browsers. Let's distill this down to the key takeaways for you to remember.
Sounds good.
First, an API is the ultimate abstraction. It is a contract that lets you use a tool or get data without needing to know any of the messy backend details. You put your input in, you get your output out, and you don't have to care if the backend is a state-of-the-art server farm or spaghetti code.
Second, always check your context. Today, the word API is an umbrella term. Most of the time, people mean web APIs where you send HTTP requests over the internet to get JSON data back. But it can also mean local OS APIs or browser APIs. Look at the verbs in the documentation. Are you fetching from a URL or calling a local function?
And third, which solves our central mystery, if you're using a browser API, like a web audio API, the program you're talking to is just the browser itself. You aren't connecting to the internet. You're just using JavaScript as a steering wheel to drive the powerful engine that is already running locally on your computer.
Understanding those distinctions transforms an API from a terrifying black box into a highly predictable tool.
To all the divers exploring with us today, thank you so much for joining the Deep Dive Classroom. If this helped clear up the API confusion for you, please remember to like and subscribe so you don't miss our future deep dives. Comment below with your own questions or tell us what tech jargon you want us to decode next. Also, be sure to visit the Deep Dive AI blog for more insights and check out our Fourth Wall store for some great gear.
Before we go, though, one of the developers in our sources left us with a rather profound thought experiment about the nature of APIs that I think perfectly wraps up the concept of hidden mechanics.
Oh, I know exactly the one you were talking about.
We established that an API is simply an interface where you put an input in and get an output out, completely ignoring the internal logic of the system you're interacting with. Well, this developer noted, my dog is an API. I give her treats as an input, and she gives me face licks as an output. I have no idea how her internal logic processes that.
It's a perfect analogy.
But then the developer had a realization about the reverse flow of information. Wait a second. My dog barks as an input, and I give her belly rubs as an output.
Oh, no.
It leaves you with one final memorable question to ponder as we close out today's deep dive.
Yep.
Am I an API?
The ultimate abstraction. We are all just interfaces responding to inputs. Thanks for listening, divers. We will see you next time.